Welcome to my channel Liberty Old Coin, exciting deep dive here on the channel. Today, we're taking a journey back in time, not with a time machine, but with a small, unassuming piece of American history. First up, let's set the stage for why this coin, the 1941 Jefferson Nickel, is more than just an old piece of currency. Imagine America in 1941, a nation on the brink of monumental change. The world was at war, and the United States was gearing up for an unavoidable conflict. It was the last full year before the attack on Pearl Harbor, a time of innocence and industrial might. And in the middle of all this historical tension, the United States Mint was busily striking millions of nickels. These coins, featuring the profile of President Thomas Jefferson on the front and his beloved Virginia home, Monticello, on the back, were the pocket change of the greatest generation. They bought sodas, paid for newspapers, and passed through the hands of soldiers who would soon become heroes. Holding one of these coins is like holding a tangible piece of that era, a silent witness to a pivotal moment in world history. Now you might be wondering, if they made millions of them, how can they be valuable? That's the million-dollar question, or in this case, the multi-thousand-dollar question. The reality is that the vast majority of these coins are not worth a fortune. In fact, if you find a worn, beat-up 1941 nickel in an old jar, it's likely only worth its face value of 5 cents, or maybe $1 or $2 to a collector who just needs it to fill a hole in their album. And this is a massive but. The word rare doesn't always mean low mintage. Sometimes, rare means in high condition. While over 200 million of these were made at the Philadelphia Mint alone, the passing of over 8 decades has taken its toll. Finding one that has survived without any wear with its original luster intact is like finding a needle in a haystack, and that's where the real value begins to climb. Let's break down the 3 main varieties from 1941, because not all are created equal. You have the Philadelphia coin, which has no mint mark. Then you have the Denver coin, marked with a small D on the back, to the right of Monticello. And finally, the San Francisco coin, marked with an S. Philadelphia churned out a staggering 203,265,000 nickels that year. Denver produced over 53 million, and San Francisco added another 43 million into the mix. So, the sheer numbers are huge. But here's a secret that seasoned collectors know. This mint-marked nickel from San Francisco is the one to watch. Because it had the lowest mintage, it's often the most sought after in higher grades, and its value on the market reflects that demand. So what should you be looking for? Condition is king. A coin in what we call circulated condition, one that was used in commerce and shows visible wear, isn't going to pay off your mortgage. We're talking about coins in mint state or uncirculated condition. These are coins that, for whatever reason, were tucked away in 1941 and never spent. They still have that original mint luster, that fresh-from-the-press look. A standard 1941 nickel in mint state might fetch you between $5 and $30, depending on its exact grade and eye appeal. But that's just the appetizer. The main course is when you get into the really high-end stuff. And this is where the numbers get truly exciting. We aren't just talking about a few $100s. We are talking about real money. According to professional coin grading service auction records, a 1941 nickel from the Philadelphia Mint, graded mint state 67, has sold for over $5,000. That's a 5-cent piece that's worth $5,000. Think about that for a second. It's a return on investment that would make any stockbroker jealous. But it doesn't stop there. A 1941 S-nickel in a similar high grade has been known to sell for almost $9,000. We're getting closer to that 5-figure mark. Now prepare to have your jaw drop. The absolute pinnacle of 1941 nickel value lies with the Denver issue. But it's not just any 1941 D nickel. We have to talk about the full steps variety. Look at the image of Monticello on the back of the coin. You'll see steps leading up to the pillars of the house. On most coins, these steps are mushy or incomplete due to the striking process. But on a full steps nickel, you can see 5 or 6 distinct, unbroken lines. This is incredibly hard to achieve and even harder to find in a coin that's been perfectly preserved. A 1941 Jefferson Nickel with full steps, graded at the highest levels, has smashed auction records. We're talking about a coin that sold for an astonishing $11,400. $11,400 for one nickel. And we haven't even touched on the true crown jewel of the series. In 1941, the Philadelphia Mint also produced a small number of special coins for collectors, known as proof coins. These aren't your regular pocket change. They were struck on polished planchets with polished dies, resulting in a sharp, mirror-like finish. Only 18,720 of these proof nickels were made in 1941, making them significantly rarer than their business strike counterparts. A 1941 proof nickel in top condition, with deep cameo contrast, is a thing of beauty and a trophy for any collector. These are not the coins you find in a jar. These are the coins you find in a safe deposit box, and they can easily be worth several $1,000s. So how do you know if you have a hidden fortune in your pocket? First, grab a magnifying glass. Look at the back of the coin on the right side of Monticello. Do you see a small D, a small s, or nothing at all? That's your mint mark. Second, look at the condition. Does the coin look dull and worn with Jefferson's hair and eyebrows smoothed out, or does it look fresh with sharp details and a nice shine? If it's the latter, you need to be very careful. Don't clean it. Cleaning a coin destroys its value. Put it in a soft cloth or a protective sleeve. Next, look at those steps on Monticello. Can you clearly see the individual steps, or are they all blurred together? If they are sharp and distinct, you might have a full steps candidate, and you need to get it professionally appraised. The difference between a coin worth $20 and a coin worth $11,000 can come down to that one tiny detail. It's absolutely mind-blowing when you think about it. This is the thrill of coin collecting, and it's a thrill that is accessible to everyone. You don't need to be a millionaire to be a treasure hunter. You just need to start looking. Start with your own change jar. Ask your grandparents if they have any old coins lying around. You never know what you might find. That old 1941 nickel that your grandfather used to buy a pack of gum before shipping off to war could be the very same coin that now funds your dream vacation. The value isn't just in the money, though. It's in the history. It's in the connection to a time so different from our own. The 1941 nickel represents the end of an era, the calm before the storm of World War II, after which even the composition of the nickel would change to include silver for the war effort from 1942 to 1945. So, when you hold a 1941 nickel, you're holding a piece of pre-war America. That historical context adds a layer of value that no price tag can fully capture. Now I want to give you a mission. Go home, search through your old coin collections, your piggy banks, and those little jars of change you keep on your dresser. Look for any nickel from 1941. Check that mint mark. Examine those steps. You are now armed with the knowledge to spot a potential treasure. And if you find one that looks promising, don't just take my word for it. Do some more research, or better yet, take it to a reputable coin dealer for a professional opinion. You might just be sitting on a small fortune without even knowing it. In conclusion, while most 1941 nickels are common, the potential for discovering an extraordinarily valuable specimen is very real. From the $5,000 Philadelphia coin to the nearly $9,000 San Francisco coin, and all the way up to the record-breaking $11,400 Denver full steps nickel, the value spectrum is vast and exciting. The maximum you can sell one for is clearly into 5 figures, a phenomenal sum for a 5-cent piece. So keep your eyes peeled and your magnifying glass ready. The next time you hear the jingle of change, listen closely. It might just be the sound of history, and maybe, just maybe, it's the sound of your next big discovery. Thanks for watching and happy hunting. Next coin, the 1946 Jefferson Nickel, stands as one of the most fascinating pieces of American pocket chain you will ever encounter, not because it is rare in the traditional sense, but because it represents a homecoming. This coin marks the moment America stepped back from the brink of World War and returned to the business of normal life. When you hold a 1946 nickel, you are holding the very first full year of peacetime production, a symbol of a nation shifting from manufacturing tanks and ammunition to making cars and refrigerators again. It is the sound of the factory whistle blowing for peacetime, captured in metal. First up, we have to understand exactly what this coin is and why 1946 is such a pivotal year. Throughout World War II, from late 1942 to 1945, the United States Mint changed the composition of the 5-cent piece to save nickel for armor plating. Those coins, known as war nickels, contained 35% silver. But in 1946, the Mint switched back. The 1946 nickel is made of the standard pre-war alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This return to normalcy is the defining characteristic of this coin, making it the bridge between wartime sacrifice and post-war prosperity. It was designed by Felix Schlag, who won a competition beating out 390 other artists to see his vision of Thomas Jefferson and Monticello immortalized on our currency. Now, let's talk about the mints and the numbers, because this is where the story of value begins to unfold. The 1946 nickel was produced exclusively at the Philadelphia Mint, with a massive mintage of 161,116,000 coins. If you find a 1946 nickel with no mint mark above the dome of Monticello on the back, that is your Philadelphia issue. However, and this is a crucial detail that many people overlook, there is also a 1946D nickel minted in Denver. The DenverMint produced 45,292,200 of these coins, which is significantly less than Philadelphia. So right off the bat, we have two different coins with two different production numbers, and that difference in mintage is the first clue that not all 1946 nickels are created equal. Let me be very clear about the condition spectrum, because this is where the magic happens. A worn, beat-up 1946 nickel that has been jingling around in pockets for 80 years is not going to pay off your car loan. In circulated condition, these coins are worth between 10 cents and $2. They are common, they are plentiful, and they tell the story of everyday commerce. But the moment you step into the world of uncirculated coins, the game changes entirely. A standard uncirculated example in mint state 65 condition might fetch you $10 to $20. That is a nice return on a 5-cent investment, but we are just getting started. The real treasure hunt begins with a specific detail that separates the common from the spectacular, the full steps designation. Look at the back of the coin at the image of Monticello. You will see steps leading up to the pillars of the house. On most coins, these steps are mushy, blurred, or incomplete because the striking pressure wasn't strong enough to bring them up fully. But on a full steps nickel, you can see 5 or 6 distinct, unbroken lines. This is incredibly difficult to achieve, and it is even harder to find a coin that has been perfectly preserved with those steps intact for nearly a century. A 1946 Philadelphia nickel with full steps in high grade can command hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Now let's look at the actual sales data, because numbers do not lie. The Numismatic portal, which archives real auction results, shows that a 1946 nickel graded MS67 sold for $1,762 at Heritage Auctions back in 2013. More recently, an MS67 example from the famous D.L. Hansen collection sold for $775. These are serious numbers for a coin that most people would spend without a second thought. But we haven't even hit the peak yet. The absolute maximum value for a standard 1946 nickel in the highest known grades is estimated to be in the range of $1,700 to as high as $8,800 for the finest full-step examples known to exist. But wait, there is a wild card in this deck that changes everything. I am talking about the MintErrors. In the world of coin collecting, errors are the holy grail, and the 1946 nickel has some doozies. The most spectacular example comes from November 2022, when a 1945 Jefferson nickel was accidentally struck on a leftover wartime silver alloy planchet. That coin, which is essentially a transitional error, sold at auction for an incredible $9,600. Can you imagine finding a nickel that looks slightly off, only to discover it is worth nearly $10,000? That is the dream that keeps collectors searching. And that is not the only error. There's also a documented 1946 nickel that was struck on a cent planchet, the wrong size blank intended for a penny. That coin, graded MS63 brown by PCGS, sold for $840. Another fascinating error is the double die reverse variety, where the lettering on the back shows a subtle doubling effect. An MS65 example of that error sold for $504. These errors prove that even common coins can become extraordinary through the lens of a minting mistake. Let me address the Denver issue specifically, because the 1946D has a reputation among collectors for being the best struck of the three mints during this era. The DenverMint in the 1940s had a knack for producing coins with sharper details, which means you are statistically more likely to find a full steps 1946D than a full steps Philadelphia coin. This makes the Denver issue highly desirable. The auction record for a 1946D nickel is $1,265 for an MS67 example. But in the highest full steps grades, these coins can range from $1,200 all the way up to $8,600. That is an astonishing return for a coin that started as 5 cents. Now I want you to think about the future potential of this coin. The question is always, can it be valuable in the future? The answer is a resounding yes, but with a caveat. The value is tied to condition and demand. As the years go by, these coins become harder to find in pristine condition. The survival estimates from PCGS suggest that out of the 161 million Philadelphia nickels made, only about 235,000 survive in mint state 65 or better condition. That might sound like a lot, but when you consider the number of collectors worldwide competing for those coins, the supply is actually quite limited. As time passes and more coins get damaged or lost, the premium for the nice ones will only go up. Let's talk about how you, right now, can determine if you have a hidden gem. First, grab a magnifying glass and look at the back of the coin to the right of Monticello. Do you see a small D or nothing at all? If you see a D, you have the scarcer Denver issue. Second, look at the condition. Does Jefferson's hair show crisp, detailed lines, or is it smooth and worn? Third, and most importantly, look at those steps on the back of the building. If you can count 5 or 6 distinct steps without any breaks, you need to stop everything and put that coin in a protective holder. Do not clean it. Do not rub it. Cleaning a coin is the fastest way to destroy its value. You want to preserve that original mint surface. Second coin, the 1970D Jefferson Nickel, is one of those coins that perfectly illustrates the incredible duality of numismatics, where a single coin can be worth either 5 cents or a life-changing sum of money, depending entirely on one tiny detail that most people have never even noticed. This coin, struck at the DenverMint more than 5 decades ago, exists by the hundreds of millions. Yet the specific example we are discussing today is so elusive that professional coin graders have only certified a handful in its most desirable form. When we talk about the 1970D with the D mint mark, we are talking about a modern-era coin that defies all logic and expectation. First up, let us establish exactly what this coin is and when it was born. The year was 1970, a time of moon landings, muscle cars, and social upheaval. The United States Mint at Denver was running at full capacity, producing coins to fuel an expanding economy. The Denver Mint struck 515,485,380 Jefferson Nickels that year, each one bearing the small D mint mark located just below the date on the obverse side, right next to Thomas Jefferson's bust. That is over 500 million coins, a number so massive it is hard to comprehend. They were made for the same reason all coins are made: to facilitate commerce, to make change at cash registers, to buy newspapers and sodas and gasoline. The design itself carries the elegant simplicity of Felix Schlag's winning entry from a national competition. On the front, we have the left-facing profile of Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, with the national motto, "In God We Trust," arching gracefully to the left. On the reverse stands Monticello, Jefferson's beloved Virginia plantation home, rendered in classical architectural detail. Below that building lies the name Monticello, and below that, the denomination 5 cents. It is a design that Americans had grown accustomed to since 1938, and by 1970, it was as familiar as the morning newspaper. Now, here is where the story takes its dramatic turn. If you were to find a typical 1970 nickel in your pocket change today, the kind that has been jingling around for decades with worn surfaces and dulled details, its value is precisely 5 cents. In very fine or about uncirculated condition, it might fetch $1 or $2 from a collector who needs it for an album. Even in mint state grades up to MS65, we are talking about $30 to $80, which is a nice return but not exactly retirement money. But there is a secret hidden in those steps leading up to Monticello, and that secret changes everything. The term full steps is the magic words that separate the common from the legendary. On the reverse of every Jefferson nickel, there are 6 distinct steps depicted on the approach to Monticello's main entrance. On the vast majority of coins, these steps are mushy, incomplete, or broken due to insufficient striking pressure or die wear. But on a tiny, almost mythical fraction of 1970 nickels, those steps are sharp, fully formed, and distinct. These are the full steps varieties, and they are the holy grail of modern nickel collecting. The PCGS has certified only 4 examples as full steps, and NGC has certified exactly 0. 4 coins out of more than 500 million minted. Let that sink in for a moment. The rarity of the full steps 1970 cannot be overstated. Numismatic experts have identified the 1970 as the single rarest full steps nickel of the entire 1970s decade, significantly tougher to find than any other Denver issue from that era. This is not a coin you can simply order from a dealer or find at a coin show with any regularity. These are the coins that exist in the highest strata of collecting, the kind that change hands quietly among serious collectors who understand what they are looking at. When the numismatic community says extremely rare, they mean it in the most literal sense possible. Let us talk about the value, because this is where the numbers become absolutely staggering. According to the Certified Coin Guild pricing guide, a 1970 Jefferson nickel with full steps in MS65 condition is valued at approximately $5,620. But wait, because it gets even better. The same coin in MS66 condition, which is the finest known grade for this issue, carries a value of $10,000 according to CPG. Other pricing services have estimated the MS65 full steps value as high as $28,667 and the MS66 full steps value at an astonishing $52,121. That is a 5-cent piece worth more than $50,000. That is not a coin, that is a down payment on a house. The auction records tell a slightly more conservative but still remarkable story. In December 2022, a 1970 Jefferson nickel with full steps graded MS66 by NGC sold at Heritage Auctions for $4,560. This particular example was described as having a fold-over strike error, which adds another layer of desirability. Another full steps example in MS65 sold for $350 through Great Collections. These are real transactions, actual money changing hands for what most people would dismiss as pocket change. The discrepancy between auction records and guide values reflects the extreme rarity and the difficulty of establishing a consistent market price for something that appears so infrequently. The question of how many people want to buy this coin is almost rhetorical. The demand for the 1970D full steps nickel comes from two directions. First, you have the serious Jefferson Nickel specialists, the collectors who are trying to assemble a complete set of full steps coins across all dates and mint marks. For them, the 1970D is the key date, the toughest nut to crack, the coin that stands between them and a finished collection. These collectors will pay whatever it takes to secure an example when one becomes available. Second, you have the investors and speculators who understand that extreme rarity combined with growing collector interest is a formula for long-term appreciation. The history of why this coin was made is straightforward, but the history of why it is so rare in full steps condition is more technical. The strike quality at the DenverMint in 1970 simply did not produce many coins with fully realized steps. The dies, the pressure, the speed of the coining press, all of these factors conspired against the formation of those delicate step details. Most coins left the mint with mushy steps, and the ones that did have good strikes were quickly mixed into the general population, where they suffered the wear and tear of circulation. The few that survived in mint state with full steps intact are the survivors, the lucky ones that were somehow pulled aside and preserved. Let me give you a mission today. Go find your old coin collections, your piggy banks, the jars of change in your closet. Look for any 1970 nickel with a D mint mark below the date. Then take a magnifying glass, a strong one, and examine the steps on the back of the coin. Can you see distinct, unbroken lines? Are all 5 or 6 steps clearly defined? If the answer is yes, you need to protect that coin immediately. Put it in a soft holder, do not clean it, do not rub it. Cleaning a coin destroys its value, and you do not want to be the person who turns a potential $10,000 coin into a 5-cent piece through impatience. The current value of the common 1970D nickel is essentially face value for worn examples, and perhaps $30 to $80 for nice uncirculated examples without full steps. But the maximum value, the absolute peak of what this coin can sell for, is firmly in the 5-figure range. We are talking about $50,000 or more for the absolute finest known examples. That is the kind of money that changes lives, that pays for college educations, that funds dream vacations, that provides a safety net for families, all from a coin that started as 5 cents. The market for this coin is active and eager. Collectors are waiting, dealers are watching, and auction houses are ready to compete when a genuine full steps 1970D appears. The population reports show that only a handful exist in certified holders, which means the supply is fixed and dwindling. Demand, on the other hand, only increases as more people learn about the hobby and as existing collectors seek to upgrade their examples. This is basic economics. Limited supply plus growing demand equals higher prices over time. In conclusion, the 1970D Jefferson Nickel represents everything exciting about coin collecting. It is accessible enough that anyone can find one in their pocket change, yet rare enough in its highest form to command astronomical prices. The maximum you can sell one for is over $50,000, and the number of people who want to buy it includes every serious Jefferson Nickel collector in the world. So get searching, stay patient, and never underestimate the coin in your hand. That little piece of metal with Thomas Jefferson on the front and a house on the back might just be your ticket to something extraordinary. Happy hunting!